Imagine waking up every morning knowing that your life, your freedom, even your family, could be bought, sold, or torn apart at any moment. In the southern United States, before the country was truly united, this was the harsh reality for millions of African Americans. The economy of the South thrived on cash crops like cotton and tobacco. But behind every bale of cotton and every harvest of tobacco leaves were people, men, women, and children whose labor was not voluntary but forced. These individuals were treated as property, their humanity stripped away, and their daily existence dictated by the whims of their owners. The plantations were sprawling, oppressive environments where work never ended, and punishment was swift for those who dared to resist. Families were often separated, sold off to different owners without warning, leaving children to grow up without parents, and parents to grieve their children's absence. Life as a slave was a constant struggle against hunger, exhaustion, and fear. Yet despite these unimaginable hardships, hope endured. Amid this oppression, stories of courage began to emerge. Some individuals refused to accept a life defined solely by chains. They began to dream of freedom not just for themselves, but for others trapped alongside them. These dreams would eventually take shape in ways that history remembers as daring, clever, and profoundly human. The paths they forged, the secret networks they created, and the courage they displayed became the foundation of what we now call the Underground Railroad. In the North, attitudes were beginning to shift. Industrial growth and moral opposition to slavery led many to view the institution as unjust. People organized, spoke out, and quietly assisted those seeking to escape. Ordinary citizens became heroes in extraordinary circumstances, guiding those in search of freedom along hidden trails, providing shelter, food, and support, often at great personal risk. But the journey to freedom was far from easy. Those who escaped had to navigate dangerous terrain, avoid slaters, and rely on both courage and cunning. Every step was a test of endurance and ingenuity. Yet, it is precisely these stories of resilience, determination, and the human spirit that continue to inspire us today. In this video, we will explore these untold paths to freedom, the incredible bravery of those who risked everything, and the ingenious ways enslaved people and their allies fought for liberation. You will meet the figures who led daring escapes, learn the strategies they used, and gain a deeper understanding of a critical chapter in American history that shaped the future of freedom. If you are ready to uncover these hidden stories and be inspired by acts of courage that changed history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Together, let us step into the past and discover the extraordinary journeys of those who refused to be defined by chains. As the sun rose over the bustling towns and cities of the northern United States, a different rhythm of life unfolded compared to the sprawling plantations of the South. The streets were lined with factories, shipping docks, and markets, a testament to an economy that relied not on forced labor but on industry, innovation, and trade. Here, the air buzzed with ideas and conversations that hinted at change, and among the thinkers, workers, and ordinary citizens, a moral awakening was quietly taking root. The North, while not free from its own complexities and contradictions, had begun to see the practice of slavery for what it was: profound injustice, a stain on the conscience of a nation striving to define itself as free and fair. Over time, more and more states moved to abolish slavery within their borders, and with each legal shift, the seeds of a broader movement for freedom began to sprout, giving rise to the abolitionist movement that would challenge the very foundations of a divided America. This movement was not born overnight. It grew from a combination of ethical conviction, religious belief, and a growing awareness of the human cost of slavery. Writers, preachers, and everyday citizens began to speak out against the institution, their words traveling like sparks through communities, igniting discussions that questioned the morality of a society that allowed one human being to own another. Pamphlets, newspapers, and books circulated widely, carrying stories of suffering and resilience, of families torn apart and individuals who dared to dream of freedom. These stories were more than tales. They were calls to action, invitations for ordinary people to confront injustice in tangible ways. The abolitionist movement became a network of voices united by a shared vision, that no person should be treated as property, and that the principles of liberty and justice should extend to all, regardless of the color of their skin. Yet the path forward was fraught with tension. The South remained entrenched in its economic reliance on enslaved labor, and the growing moral opposition from the North was met with resistance, skepticism, and sometimes outright hostility. Abolitionists risked social ostracism, legal repercussions, and personal danger to stand against a system that had long been normalized. They organized meetings, published thought-provoking essays, and engaged in spirited debates that reached the ears of politicians, clergy, and the general public. Their work was painstaking, often slow, and always fraught with the knowledge that change would not come easily. But the momentum was undeniable. Each conversation, each written word, and each act of quiet defiance contributed to a swelling current of moral urgency that could not be ignored. Among the most striking aspects of the movement was the way ordinary people became extraordinary agents of change. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, and ministers alike joined the cause, their commitment driven by conscience rather than fame or fortune. In homes, churches, and town halls, strategies were devised to assist those seeking freedom, providing food, clothing, and shelter to fugitives traveling northward along the hidden paths that would collectively become known as the Underground Railroad. These acts of courage were often carried out in secrecy, for the consequences of discovery could be severe, yet the commitment to justice outweighed fear. It was in these quiet, determined acts that the moral vision of the North transformed from abstract principles into tangible, life-saving action. The stories of individuals who risked everything to aid enslaved people paint a vivid picture of both danger and hope. They remind us that the struggle against oppression is not only fought on grand political stages, but also in the small, often unseen moments of bravery that ripple outward to create lasting impact. As fugitive slaves navigated forests, rivers, and towns under cover of darkness, guided by people they might never fully know, they relied on the conviction and ingenuity of those who believed in the principle that freedom was a right, not a privilege. Each successful escape was a testament to human courage, to the power of moral clarity, and to the belief that ordinary citizens could indeed challenge entrenched systems of injustice. This moral awakening of the North also had profound implications for the country as a whole. The growing divide between a Southern economy built on slavery and a Northern ethos increasingly hostile to it set the stage for a national reckoning. The abolitionist movement did more than assist in escapes. It reshaped public consciousness, influencing laws, elections, and ultimately the trajectory of a nation. As stories of resistance spread, empathy and outrage grew in equal measure, inspiring more people to question their assumptions, to confront the uncomfortable truths of their society, and to take action in whatever ways they could. By the time the tensions between North and South reached their breaking point, the foundation laid by the abolitionist movement had already transformed the moral landscape. The North's growing opposition to slavery was no longer a collection of isolated opinions, but a networked conviction that freedom and justice were indivisible. This collective moral stance provided both the ethical framework and the practical support systems that would empower the Underground Railroad, guide brave individuals like Harriet Tubman, and fuel the larger struggle that culminated in the fight to abolish slavery across the United States. As we reflect on this history, it is clear that the abolitionist movement exemplifies the power of conscience in action, the way a society can confront its deepest wrongs, and the capacity of ordinary people to enact extraordinary change. Their courage reminds us that standing against injustice often requires risk, creativity, and unwavering commitment, and that the moral choices of a few can ignite the hope and liberation of many. In the heart of the 19th century, as the United States wrestled with its moral contradictions, a group of dedicated individuals emerged whose courage and ingenuity would leave an indelible mark on history, not merely through words, but through deliberate action that challenged the very structure of a society built on the enslavement of human beings. These men and women, known as abolitionists, recognized that freedom was not a concept to be admired from a distance, but a right to be actively pursued, defended, and extended to those who had been systematically stripped of it. They understood that moral outrage alone was insufficient to dismantle the entrenched institution of slavery. It had to be coupled with concrete measures, strategic thinking, and an unyielding willingness to risk personal safety in service of a higher cause. Abolitionists did not confine themselves to public speeches or distant advocacy, though those were essential tools in the movement. They organized protests that drew attention to the human suffering concealed behind the plantations of the South, rallies where communities gathered to confront uncomfortable truths, and forums where stories of resilience and oppression were shared in vivid detail, shaking listeners from complacency and inspiring action. Pamphlets and newspapers became weapons in their struggle, filled with accounts of the brutal realities endured by enslaved individuals, the torn families, the endless labor, and the inescapable punishments that accompanied even the smallest perceived infraction. Through these publications, abolitionists communicated across town, states, and regions, spreading the message that slavery was incompatible with justice, humanity, and the ideals upon which the nation claimed to be founded. Each printed page, each carefully crafted essay, was a calculated effort to awaken empathy, provoke moral reflection, and create a ripple effect that could not be contained within the walls of a single city or the limits of any one audience. Yet the true depth of the abolitionist commitment is most clearly seen in the networks they established to assist those who sought to escape bondage. These clandestine operations were the lifelines of freedom, intricate systems of safe houses, secret routes, and trusted guides that demanded absolute discretion, trust, and coordination. Known collectively as the Underground Railroad, this network was not a railroad in the conventional sense, but a symbolic and operational pathway through which enslaved individuals could traverse hundreds of miles of perilous terrain, guided by the knowledge, courage, and commitment of those willing to defy laws, social norms, and threats of severe punishment. Conductors of the Underground Railroad, both black and white, young and old, ordinary citizens with extraordinary resolve, provided not only shelter and sustenance but also crucial guidance, teaching escapees how to navigate rivers, forests, and backroads, and offering strategies to elude capture from slave catchers and law enforcement who were often as determined as they were relentless. The planning and execution of these escapes demanded remarkable ingenuity. Messages were encoded in quilts, songs, and everyday signals, allowing communication to flow covertly without alerting authorities. Each station along the route represented a commitment to moral courage, a willingness to place human dignity above personal safety, and a recognition that liberty was worth any risk. The stories of those who assisted in these journeys reveal the extraordinary lengths to which individuals would go to uphold principles of justice. Some abolitionists posed as travelers, merchants, or laborers, blending seamlessly into southern communities to meet and guide fugitives. Others operated from the safety of northern towns, coordinating movements, providing resources, and maintaining communication with their southern counterparts. It was a complex dance of secrecy, strategy, and unwavering dedication, executed with precision under the constant shadow of danger. Within this intricate network, individuals like Harriet Tubman, Levi Coffin, and countless unnamed heroes exemplified the profound interplay of courage, intelligence, and empathy that defined the abolitionist mission. Tubman herself, having escaped the bonds of slavery, returned repeatedly to the South to lead others to freedom, navigating treacherous landscapes and using her deep knowledge of the terrain, coded messages, and keen instincts to outwit those who sought to return her charges to bondage. Livy Coffin's home became a renowned station, known as the Grand Central Station of the Underground Railroad, where hundreds found temporary safety and direction on their path northward. These figures, along with countless ordinary citizens who risked their livelihoods, freedom, and even their lives, created a human network of extraordinary resilience, bridging moral conviction with actionable impact. The abolitionist efforts extended beyond the immediate act of facilitating escape. They reshaped public consciousness, laying bare the contradictions inherent in a nation founded on liberty while perpetuating systemic oppression. By organizing, publishing, and providing clandestine support, abolitionists demonstrated that social change required both moral clarity and operational acumen, that the fight for justice was as much about practical action as it was about principles. They illustrated that the struggle for freedom is a collective endeavor, reliant on networks of committed individuals who recognize the intrinsic value of every human life and are willing to act decisively to protect. In weaving together protests, publications, and secretive operations, the abolitionists of the North and South created a legacy of courage and ingenuity that would not only challenge the institution of slavery, but also inspire future generations to confront injustice wherever it persists. The story of these abolitionists underscores a fundamental truth, that freedom is never guaranteed, and that the pursuit of justice often demands extraordinary moral and practical effort. Through their courage, creativity, and unwavering commitment to the cause, they transformed empathy into action and moral outrage into a coordinated movement that changed lives, reshaped communities, and laid the groundwork for the eventual abolition of slavery, leaving an enduring imprint on the moral and historical fabric of the nation. Beneath the quiet fields and sleepy towns of the antebellum South, a hidden network thrived, invisible to the eyes of those who sought to maintain control, yet pulsating with the lifeblood of freedom. This clandestine system, later immortalized as the Underground Railroad, was neither a railroad nor a formal organization, but rather a sprawling, secretive web of routes, safe houses, and trusted guides that connected desperate individuals seeking liberty to those willing to help them achieve. Every mile traversed along this hidden path was a testament to courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding belief that every human being deserved the chance to live free, away from the oppressive hand of slavery, from the shadowed edges of plantations to the forests and backroads that crisscrossed the South. Enslaved men, women, and children moved with cautious determination, guided by signals, whispered instructions, and the unwavering commitment of those who risked everything to lead them to freedom. The creation and maintenance of these routes required extraordinary ingenuity and collaboration. Each safe house, known as a station, was carefully chosen for its ability to remain undetected while providing essential shelter, nourishment, and guidance. Some were simple farmhouses hidden among rolling fields. Others were the cellars of churches, discreet back rooms of businesses, or even secret compartments within ordinary homes. These stations were often staffed by ordinary people who, despite the ever-present threat of legal punishment or violent reprisal, opened their doors and hearts to strangers fleeing unimaginable oppression. Their bravery was not performative but profoundly practical. They understood that the success of an escape depended on precise timing, vigilance, and the coordinated efforts of multiple allies along the route. Communication along the Underground Railroad was as subtle as it was sophisticated. Codes were embedded in quilts hung on clotheslines, the arrangement of stones in walls, or the manner in which a candle was placed in a window. Songs, particularly spirituals, carried hidden instructions that could indicate direction, warn of danger, or signal the presence of a safe house. Every gesture, every pattern, every seemingly ordinary object could carry crucial information for those navigating the treacherous journey northward. In these coded signals, enslaved individuals found both guidance and reassurance, a reminder that they were not alone in their pursuit of freedom, that a network of allies extended across states, ready to support their journey despite the grave risks involved. The journey itself was arduous and perilous, testing every facet of human endurance. Escaping individuals often traveled at night, moving silently through dense forests, over rivers, and across open fields, hiding during the day to avoid patrols and slave catchers. Hunger, exhaustion, and fear were constant companions, yet so too was hope, the intangible force that propelled people forward despite the dangers that loomed with every step. Those who guided them, known as conductors, had to be equally resourceful, constantly adapting to new threats, planning routes that minimized exposure, and providing encouragement and reassurance. Their knowledge of the terrain, weather, and social landscape was indispensable, and their courage often meant the difference between life and death for those they assisted. Among the most celebrated figures of this network was Harriet Tubman, whose extraordinary commitment and tactical brilliance exemplified the spirit of the Underground Railroad. Having escaped slavery herself, Tubman returned repeatedly to the South, navigating hidden trails, swamps, and forests under cover of darkness to rescue dozens more. Her deep understanding of human behavior, natural landscapes, and coded communication allowed her to lead escapees through paths that were virtually invisible to those who sought to recapture them. Yet she was not alone. Countless unnamed heroes, families, clergy, and community members contributed to this living tapestry of resistance, creating a chain of protection and hope that spanned states and crossed borders. The Underground Railroad was not limited to the journey from the southern plantations to the northern free states. For many, it extended into Canada, where slavery was prohibited and safety could be more assured. This extended network required coordination across borders, a shared understanding of routes, and the ability to adapt to the increasingly perilous legal environment imposed by laws such as the Fugitive Slave Acts, which criminalized assistance to escaped individuals and placed extraordinary burdens on those attempting to evade recapture. Despite these challenges, the system endured, growing in sophistication and reach as more people recognized the moral imperative to resist injustice and provide refuge to the oppressed. The significance of the Underground Railroad lies not only in the lives it saved, but in the demonstration of human solidarity, creativity, and defiance in the face of oppression. It transformed abstract ideals of freedom into tangible, actionable pathways, showing that even in societies structured by injustice, determined individuals can carve out spaces of resistance and hope. Each escape, each hidden shelter, each silent signal represented a refusal to accept subjugation, a declaration that the principles of justice and human dignity could not be confined by law or threatened by violence. The legacy of this clandestine network extends far beyond the specific escapes it facilitated. It serves as a powerful reminder that freedom is both a personal and collective endeavor, reliant on courage, strategic thinking, and the willingness to act in the service of others. The Underground Railroad exemplifies the extraordinary impact that ordinary individuals can have when they unite behind a shared moral purpose, illustrating how networks of care, guidance, and bravery can overcome formidable barriers. As the stories of those who traveled these secret routes are remembered, they illuminate the profound resilience of the human spirit and the enduring truth that the pursuit of liberty, however dangerous and uncertain, is a journey worth every risk. The brilliance of the Underground Railroad lay not only in its purpose, but in the extraordinary ingenuity with which it operated. A delicate and sophisticated system built to protect the lives of those fleeing the unimaginable horrors of enslavement while evading relentless pursuit. Every mile traversed by a fugitive was orchestrated with precision, relying on a network of coded messages, secret signals, and carefully concealed stations, each component essential to navigating the treacherous journey northward. The conductors and supporters who operated this clandestine system had to think creatively, adapt constantly, and maintain a level of secrecy that demanded both discipline and trust, for even the slightest misstep could result in capture, imprisonment, or death. In an era where communication was limited and surveillance intense, the use of symbolism and subtle signs became an art form, transforming ordinary objects and behaviors into lifelines of hope. Quilts, for instance, became more than simple bed coverings. Their patterns conveyed directions, warnings, or assurances of safety. A particular arrangement of squares might indicate a nearby station or suggest the safest path through a forest, while another pattern could signal the presence of danger or the need to hide. These quilts were hung in plain sight, on clotheslines or railings, blending seamlessly into domestic routines while quietly transmitting vital information to those trained to interpret them. Similarly, songs, especially spirituals passed down through generations, carried hidden guidance within their lyrics. When sung softly under the cover of night, they instructed fugitives to wade through water to mask their scent, follow specific landmarks, or remain in place until the path ahead was clear. Every note and verse became a coded map, a way to communicate without uttering a word that could betray a person's location or intentions. Stations, often ordinary homes or farm buildings, were carefully chosen for their discretion and accessibility. They were furnished to provide basic comfort, food, warmth, and temporary rest, but more importantly, they offered security. Families who operated these stations did so at great personal risk, knowing that discovery could lead to fines, imprisonment, or violent retribution from slave catchers and authorities enforcing the Fugitive Slave Acts. Yet the dedication never wavered, fueled by a profound moral conviction that freedom was worth any personal cost. Each station represented a sanctuary, a pause in a grueling journey, and a reminder that the pursuit of liberty was supported by a network of human compassion and courage. Conductors guiding fugitives from one station to the next had to remain vigilant, always assessing risks, adjusting routes, and timing movements carefully to avoid patrols or neighbors who might betray them. Their knowledge of the terrain, local communities, and social patterns was crucial, turning the natural landscape into a strategic asset and ensuring that every escapee could progress safely toward freedom. The ingenuity of the system extended to methods of signaling, which often relied on mundane actions to convey critical information. A candle placed in a window might indicate that it was safe to approach, while its absence could suggest danger. A red cloth tied to a fence post, the position of a garden tool, or even the way smoke rose from a chimney could serve as a silent directive to those moving through the network. These signals required both a shared understanding and careful observation, demanding that fugitives and guides alike remain alert, perceptive, and attuned to their surroundings. It was a form of communication that required trust and attention to detail, reinforcing the sense of community and collective responsibility that underpinned the Underground Railroad. The coordination of these coded messages, signals, and hidden stations created a delicate ecosystem of resistance. Every conductor, every supportive household, every carefully interpreted signal contributed to a living web of protection that stretched across states and even into Canada. The network's success depended on the interplay between individual courage and communal solidarity, as well as the ability to adapt in real time to the ever-present threats posed by slave catchers. Law enforcement and informants. Stories of escapes often recount the tension, fear, and ingenuity required to move from one station to the next, as fugitives relied on the skill and experience of their guides to navigate treacherous terrain and evade capture. These journeys demanded not only physical endurance but mental acuity, as individuals had to read signals, interpret codes, and make split-second decisions, knowing that any error could be catastrophic. The human element of the Underground Railroad was as remarkable as its strategic design. Conductors such as Harriet Tubman risked their own safety repeatedly, returning to hostile territories to lead others to freedom, using their intimate knowledge of the network, terrain, and coded signals to outwit pursuers. Ordinary citizens, from farmers to clergy, became guardians of liberty, interpreting and transmitting messages, offering temporary refuge, and providing sustenance for those in flight. Each participant, whether widely known or remaining anonymous, contributed to an extraordinary collective endeavor, demonstrating how moral conviction, ingenuity, and cooperation could overcome systemic oppression through its network of hidden stations, coded quilts, and subtle signals. The Underground Railroad transformed what could have been an impossible escape into a navigable path toward freedom. It exemplified the power of human ingenuity and solidarity under pressure, showing how creative communication, meticulous planning, and unwavering courage could circumvent laws designed to perpetuate injustice. The legacy of this system is not only in the lives it saved but in its demonstration of how ordinary people, united by shared principles, can construct a complex, adaptive, and effective response to oppression. Every hidden station, every quilt pattern, every whispered song stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring pursuit of liberty against daunting odds, revealing a chapter of history where courage, intelligence, and moral clarity converged to light the path to freedom. Harriet Tubman's life reads like a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and unwavering moral conviction, a story that begins in the oppressive confines of slavery and unfolds into a journey of daring leadership and selfless heroism. Born into bondage in Maryland during the early decades of the 19th century, Tubman experienced firsthand the brutal realities of enslaved life, the relentless labor, the physical abuse, the constant surveillance, and the ever-present fear that one misstep could result in punishment or death. From a young age, she developed a sharp awareness of both the dangers surrounding her and the opportunities for evasion and survival, cultivating a keen intelligence and resourcefulness that would later become indispensable in her work on the Underground Railroad. Her early experiences left scars, both physical and emotional, yet they also ignited a determination to seek freedom not just for herself, but for those who remained trapped in the harsh system of slavery. In 1849, Tubman made the perilous decision to escape from her enslavers, navigating the dense forests, rivers, and swamplands that formed the intricate terrain of the South. Traveling primarily by night to avoid detection, she relied on her intimate knowledge of the land, the guidance of celestial markers, and the instinctive understanding of human behavior to evade patrols, dogs, and informants. Her successful escape was the first chapter in a life defined by courage, as she could have settled into freedom for the remainder of her days. Yet her empathy, moral conviction, and sense of justice propelled her back into the perilous world she had fled. determined to lead others to the same liberation she had attained. Tubman became a conductor on the Underground Railroad, a role that required not only bravery but exceptional strategic and interpersonal skills. She guided enslaved individuals through hazardous terrain, moving from one hidden station to the next, coordinating with families, abolitionists, and sympathetic strangers who risked fines, imprisonment, and even violence to provide sanctuary. Each journey demanded meticulous planning. She timed movements with precision, calculated distances to ensure adequate rest and sustenance, and anticipated the potential movements of pursuers. Tubman's ability to blend into her surroundings, often disguising herself as a laborer, an ordinary traveler, or even a man, allowed her to infiltrate hostile environments without arousing suspicion. Her presence in the South was as much a symbol of hope for escapees as it was a threat to the institution of slavery itself, and this duality heightened both the risk and the significance of her actions. One of Tubman's most remarkable skills was her use of songs and coded messages to communicate with those she guided. Spirituals, hymns, and everyday signals became tools of navigation, conveying instructions that could mean the difference between capture and freedom. A particular song might instruct escapees to move through water to confuse tracking dogs, or it might indicate the proximity of a safe house or the presence of danger. Tubman herself became a master of these codes, singing softly or gesturing subtly to communicate with those she led, ensuring that every individual understood the immediate steps required for survival. These methods exemplify the ingenuity inherent in the Underground Railroad. Ordinary tools, words, and gestures transformed into instruments of liberation through careful observation, knowledge, and human creativity. Beyond the tactical aspects of guiding escapees, Tubman demonstrated extraordinary psychological and emotional intelligence. She inspired confidence in those she led, calming fears and providing reassurance during moments of exhaustion, hunger, and terror. Her ability to read the temperament, physical condition, and emotional state of the individuals in her care allowed her to tailor guidance and support, ensuring that each person could endure the rigors of the journey. She became not only a leader but a source of moral strength, embodying the hope and determination necessary to persist despite the omnipresent threat of capture, betrayal, or death. Tubman's repeated journeys into the South over the course of more than a decade highlight her extraordinary commitment to collective liberation. She returned again and again, often traveling alone through hostile territory to lead groups of enslaved men, women, and children northward. Her knowledge of the terrain, the covert stations, and the human networks that supported the Underground Railroad enabled her to execute these missions with remarkable success, ultimately guiding dozens of individuals to freedom. Every trip reinforced the principle that liberty was worth the risk, and that courage coupled with strategy could overcome the formidable apparatus of oppression. Her legacy extends beyond the immediate impact of each escape. Tubman's actions demonstrated the profound power of individual initiative within a broader social movement, illustrating how one person's courage, knowledge, and empathy can catalyze collective change. She exemplified the integration of practical skill, moral leadership, and tactical intelligence, turning the abstract ideal of freedom into a tangible reality for those she guided. In doing, she left an indelible mark on history, reminding future generations that resistance to injustice requires both vision and action, that leadership is measured not only by personal achievement but by the lives one touches, and that the pursuit of freedom, however dangerous, is a moral imperative that transcends personal risk. Harriet Tubman's story, interwoven with the broader narrative of the Underground Railroad, is a testament to the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to confront oppression with intelligence, courage, and compassion. Through disguises, coded messages, strategic navigation, and tireless dedication, she transformed herself into a symbol of hope and an architect of liberation, ensuring that countless individuals could claim the freedom that had long been denied to them. Her life embodies the profound truth that even in the darkest circumstances, determination, ingenuity, and unwavering commitment to justice can illuminate a path to freedom and leave a legacy that resonates across generations, inspiring others to act in the service of human dignity and equality. The history of the Underground Railroad is not only a tale of the enslaved seeking freedom, but also a chronicle of extraordinary individuals who, driven by conscience and conviction, risked everything to aid those in flight, understanding that defiance of the law could result in imprisonment, corporal punishment, or even death. Among these brave men and women were figures whose courage and moral clarity became emblematic of the broader struggle against the institution of slavery, whose lives remind us that ordinary people, when guided by principles of justice and humanity, can wield extraordinary power. Levi Coffin, often hailed as the president of the Underground Railroad, was one such figure, a Quaker from North Carolina whose faith and determination shaped decades of resistance. Coffin's home in Newport, Indiana, became a hub for freedom seekers, a place where hundreds of individuals found shelter, sustenance, and guidance on their perilous journey northward. He devised innovative methods of communication and coordination, including the use of coded signals, to ensure that fugitives could navigate safely between stations while minimizing the risk of detection. Every successful escape from Coffin's network represented a triumph of human ingenuity and moral courage, and his tireless advocacy extended beyond direct aid, as he wrote, lobbied, and spoke publicly to challenge the societal structures that permitted slavery to persist. John Brown, another towering figure of the abolitionist movement, demonstrated a different form of courage, one that merged practical resistance with the belief that armed action was a necessary complement to moral advocacy. Brown's involvement with the Underground Railroad included helping fugitives escape to Canada, but his vision of ending slavery extended further, envisioning a society in which the oppressed could claim justice and autonomy through decisive action. His campaign in Kansas, often referred to as the Bleeding Kansas Conflict, and his later raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia, were both driven by an uncompromising commitment to ending the system of bondage. Though these actions ultimately led to his capture and execution, Brown's life highlights the multifaceted nature of resistance. It was not solely about guiding fugitives from one safe house to another, but also about challenging the very structures that made such escape necessary, inspiring others to recognize the moral imperative of liberation. Calvin Fairbank's story adds yet another dimension to the narrative, reflecting the quiet persistence of ordinary individuals who, often at great personal cost, chose to act in the service of freedom. A minister and educator, Fairbank dedicated years to aiding enslaved people, helping them cross rivers, navigate border states, and find temporary refuge along the routes that form the Underground Railroad. He faced repeated arrests, long periods of imprisonment, and the constant threat of violence, yet his resolve never wavered. Similarly, Jonathan Walker, a Massachusetts sea captain, risked legal penalties and physical harm to transport enslaved individuals northward by boat, a venture that ended in arrest, a year-long imprisonment, and the branding of his hand with the letters S for slave stealer. Walker's courage lay not only in his actions, but in the public witness his suffering created, signaling to the broader society the moral cost of defending justice against entrenched oppression. John Fairfield, hailing from Virginia, exemplifies yet another approach to defiance. He combined resourcefulness with an intimate understanding of the social and geographic landscape of the South. Having rejected his own family's ties to slaveholding, Fairfield assumed the guise of a slave trader to gain access to the plantations and towns that were otherwise closed to allies of freedom. He orchestrated escapes with meticulous planning, navigating through hostile territory, evading law enforcement, and employing ingenuity to ensure that those in his care reached safety. Fairfield's willingness to subvert appearances, adopt disguises, and manipulate social assumptions underscores the layered strategies necessary to operate effectively within a society structured around oppression. These individuals, among countless others whose names are lost to history, exemplify the breadth of human courage and ingenuity required to sustain the Underground Railroad. They acted across decades, across borders, and across social divides, each contributing to a living network that required coordination, trust, and a profound willingness to confront danger. Their methods varied from the calculated subtlety of coded signals and hidden stations to the direct confrontation of armed resistance, but the underlying principle was constant. Freedom was worth the risk, and moral obligation could transcend the strictures of law. The lives of Coffin, Brown, Fairbank, Walker, and Fairfield intersect with the broader narrative of the Underground Railroad in ways that reveal both the practical and symbolic power of individual action. Every safe house, every successful passage, every message conveyed through quilts, songs, or signs was the product of their courage and creativity, reinforcing the interconnected nature of the network and demonstrating that collective action could flourish even under conditions of extreme repression. These stories illuminate the diversity of resistance strategies, the personal sacrifices involved, and the ways in which ordinary citizens became extraordinary actors in the pursuit of justice. Ultimately, their legacy is inseparable from the broader success of the Underground Railroad. They remind us that freedom is not a passive inheritance but an achievement that often requires risk, foresight, and moral conviction. Their contributions reflect the idea that ordinary people, when united by purpose and courage, can create networks of support that transform lives and challenge systemic injustice. Through their actions, these abolitionists not only helped countless individuals reach safety but also left a lasting imprint on history, demonstrating that human determination, ingenuity, and ethical commitment can overcome even the most formidable structures of oppression and inspire future generations to continue the work of justice, equality, and liberty for all. The journey to freedom for those escaping the bonds of slavery was an ordeal of staggering physical and emotional endurance, a passage fraught with dangers that demanded every ounce of courage, ingenuity, and determination an individual could muster. Leaving behind the familiar if oppressive world of the plantation, runaways ventured into territories that were unfamiliar and often hostile, forced to navigate miles of rugged terrain, swamps, forests, and rivers, often without adequate food, shelter, or clothing, and with little to guide them beyond instinct. The stars, and the occasional covert sign from sympathizers along the Underground Railroad. Hunger was a constant companion. Days or even weeks could pass without a full meal, and every morsel acquired was either scavenged from the environment, borrowed from supportive households, or obtained surreptitiously from unwitting neighbors, each act carrying the risk of detection. The physical toll was immense. Blisters, bruises, exhaustion, and exposure to harsh weather conditions tested the limits of human endurance. And yet, for many, the vision of freedom, of autonomy, and dignity drove them onward, sustaining them through hunger and fatigue that might have broken lesser spirits. The psychological burden was equally severe, as the fear of capture was never far from the mind. Slave catchers, often armed and well-informed, roamed plantations, roads, and towns, guided by advertisements placed by enraged owners seeking to reclaim what they considered property. These advertisements detailed descriptions of escapees, including physical features, clothing, likely destinations, and even temperament, turning personal identity into a means of tracking, and rendering every step forward a calculated gamble. Vigilance became a way of life. Every rustle of leaves, every barking dog, every distant shout could signal danger, and the mental strain of remaining constantly alert was exhausting. The landscape itself became both ally and adversary, as fugitives learned to interpret shadows, sounds, and natural markers for safe passage, using forests for concealment and rivers to mask their scent, while simultaneously contending with the natural hazards of wild animals. Uneven terrain and unpredictable weather, legal and societal structures intensified the peril. The passage of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made escape profoundly more dangerous, as it imposed severe penalties on those assisting runaways and allowed enslaved individuals to be captured even in states that had abolished slavery. The law stripped fugitives of the right to testify on their own behalf and denied them access to jury trials, ensuring that recapture often led to harsh punishment with little opportunity for appeal. Communities that might have offered aid had to operate in secrecy, and anyone caught providing shelter, food, or guidance faced fines, imprisonment, or social ostracism. For runaways, this meant that freedom was contingent not only on physical survival, but also on navigating a legal and social system designed to enforce compliance with the institution of slavery, where even the smallest misstep could lead to disastrous consequences. Violence, both anticipated and realized, marked the path of escape. Captured runaways faced brutal punishments ranging from beatings to enslavement under harsher conditions, and in extreme cases, death. The psychological impact of these potential reprisals was profound, shaping behavior, limiting rest, and demanding constant vigilance. Yet even amidst these threats, moments of human solidarity emerged. Conductors on the Underground Railroad, fellow fugitives, and sympathetic citizens provided temporary refuge, supplies, and guidance, creating fleeting oases of safety that offered both physical sustenance and emotional support. Each encounter with such allies was a reminder of the collective human effort required to resist systemic oppression and the profound courage exhibited by those willing to intervene despite the risks to themselves. The practical challenges of the journey were compounded by the necessity of secrecy and deception. Escapees learned to travel under cover of darkness, to disguise their appearances, and to avoid detection in towns and along roads, often relying on signals, codes, and prearranged meeting points to navigate a complex and dangerous network. Every decision when to move, which path to take, where to rest carried weighty consequences, and the ability to read circumstances, anticipate threats, and make swift judgments could determine life or death. The ingenuity of those fleeing, coupled with the strategic thinking of conductors, allowed many to outwit pursuers repeatedly. Yet even the most carefully orchestrated plans were vulnerable to betrayal, miscalculation, or sheer misfortune. Despite the staggering risks, the human drive for freedom fueled repeated attempts and remarkable acts of courage. Individuals endured starvation, cold, and exposure, and yet pressed forward, motivated by visions of a life unshackled by ownership and oppression. Their journey was not only a physical passage, but a transformation, testament to resilience, determination, and the unquenchable desire for autonomy. Each successful escape represented a triumph not merely over individual hardship, but against a broader system of injustice that sought to deny basic humanity. The experiences of those who fled slavery underscore the interplay between vulnerability and agency, illustrating how courage, resourcefulness, and perseverance can confront even the most entrenched systems of oppression. The risks were immense, the hardships relentless, yet the determination of escapees, supported by allies who dared to defy the law, created a web of resistance that challenged the institution of slavery in profound and enduring ways. The story of these journeys, marked by hunger, harsh conditions, pursuit, legal danger, and violence, is ultimately a story of human resilience, a reminder that the pursuit of liberty, though perilous, is a powerful and defining force in history, capable of inspiring generations to confront injustice with courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering commitment to human dignity. The struggle for freedom that had driven countless enslaved individuals and courageous allies across treacherous terrain found its moment of national reckoning in the turbulent years of the American Civil War, a conflict that was as much a moral struggle as it was a military confrontation, and whose outcome would determine the fate of millions. The Union's ultimate victory was not merely a triumph of armies and strategy, but a decisive turning point in the long and painful journey toward justice, a culmination of decades of resistance, advocacy, and personal sacrifice. Abraham Lincoln, who had long navigated the delicate balance between political pragmatism and moral clarity, seized the opportunity to redefine the war as a battle for human dignity, issuing the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863, a document that declared the freedom of all enslaved individuals in the rebelling Confederate States, signaling a profound shift in both policy and principle. The proclamation, while limited in its immediate enforcement, sent an unmistakable message. The nation's commitment to liberty and equality was no longer abstract but a legal and moral imperative, a declaration that slavery, long justified and normalized, was incompatible with the values the Union claimed to uphold. This historic declaration transformed the conflict, adding a moral urgency that invigorated the Northern cause and inspired enslaved populations across the South to seek freedom with renewed determination. Plantation fields that had once been sites of labor and suffering became theaters of opportunity for those daring enough to leave, as individuals fled their bonds to join Union lines, seek refuge in cities under Union control, or navigate clandestine routes to safety in the North. The war itself, with its ebb and flow of battles, occupations, and campaigns, created openings and vulnerabilities in the Confederate States that escapees and conductors on the Underground Railroad could exploit, turning the broader military struggle into a practical avenue for liberation. Lincoln's proclamation, therefore, was both a symbolic act and a strategic instrument, aligning the military objectives of the Union with the broader human imperative of emancipation, demonstrating how law, leadership, and moral vision can converge to reshape society. The journey toward full legal abolition, however, did not end with the Emancipation Proclamation. While the proclamation applied to areas in rebellion, it did not address slavery in border states that remained loyal to the Union, nor did it eliminate the systemic structures that had long sustained human bondage. It was the passage of the 13th Amendment in December 1865 that enshrined the abolition of slavery into the Constitution, ensuring that the legal foundations of freedom were irrevocable and nationwide in scope. This amendment, ratified in the aftermath of the Union's victory, reflected the cumulative efforts of generations who had resisted, rebelled, and advocated for justice, codifying what countless individuals had fought to realize through perilous journeys, secret networks, and acts of moral courage. The amendment marked the formal end of slavery in the United States, a transformation of law that validated the sacrifices of conductors, escapees, and abolitionists, and set the stage for a society that could begin to reckon with the legacy of oppression and the promise of equality. The significance of these legal milestones extends beyond their immediate impact, illustrating the interplay between individual courage, collective action, and institutional change. The Union victory was achieved through the efforts of soldiers, strategists, and citizens who understood that the preservation of the nation was inseparable from the moral imperative to end slavery, and that military success alone could not secure justice without the legal affirmation of liberty. Lincoln's leadership, exemplified in the Emancipation Proclamation, demonstrated how executive action could transform war into a vehicle for social progress, redefining the objectives of national policy and elevating the principles of freedom to a central position in public consciousness. The 13th Amendment, in turn, converted these principles into law, providing a permanent framework for equality and civil rights while signaling a new chapter in the ongoing struggle to realize the ideals of liberty and justice for all. The stories of those who risked everything to escape slavery, who guided others along the Underground Railroad, and who challenged societal norms through advocacy and resistance converge in the moment of legal abolition, highlighting the interdependence of individual action and systemic change. The paths carved by Harriet Tubman, Levi Coffin, John Brown, and countless others were not merely journeys across physical landscapes but also journeys toward moral and political recognition, and the Union victory and subsequent legislative milestones affirmed the value of these efforts, transforming acts of personal courage into enduring national achievement. The abolition of slavery was not the end of struggle, but it represented a critical victory in the long arc toward justice, a moment when law, leadership, and human resolve aligned to dismantle one of the most entrenched systems of oppression in history. In reflecting on the Union victory, the Emancipation Proclamation, and the 13th Amendment, one can see the culmination of a narrative woven from the threads of bravery, resistance, and moral conviction. These milestones demonstrate that freedom is not simply granted but earned through sacrifice and sustained commitment, that the pursuit of justice often requires the coordination of individual initiative and systemic intervention, and that the enactment of law can both recognize and reinforce the struggles waged by countless unnamed heroes. The legal end of slavery enshrined in these acts is a testament to the transformative power of courage aligned with principle, illustrating how societies can move from injustice to recognition, from oppression to protection under the law, and from the denial of human dignity to its affirmation in enduring legal and moral terms. The story of emancipation, therefore, is as much about the battles fought in fields and homes as it is about the battles waged in courts, legislatures, and hearts. A multidimensional journey that underscores the profound interconnectedness of personal sacrifice, collective action, and the enduring quest for freedom. As we reflect on the extraordinary journey of those who escaped the bonds of slavery and the courageous individuals who risked everything to aid them, it becomes clear that the story of the Underground Railroad and the broader abolitionist movement is a testament not only to human resilience but also to the power of moral conviction. Every act of defiance, whether it was a fugitive stepping into the darkness of a perilous journey northward, or a conductor providing food, shelter, and guidance at great personal risk, represents an assertion of human dignity against a system designed to deny it. The enslaved men and women who fled their plantations were more than escapees, they were agents of their own liberation, confronting unimaginable hardship with courage, ingenuity, and an unwavering belief in the possibility of freedom. Their determination to reclaim their lives, to traverse hostile landscapes, and to survive hunger, exhaustion, and the ever-present threat of capture embodies the deepest expressions of human resilience, demonstrating that even in the harshest circumstances, the desire for autonomy and justice cannot be extinguished. Equally remarkable are the abolitionists and ordinary citizens who supported these courageous individuals, forging networks of resistance that required immense moral fortitude and creativity. Figures like Harriet Tubman, Levi Coffin, John Brown, Calvin Fairbank, Jonathan Walker, and John Fairfield among countless others whose names have faded from history, illustrate that the fight against oppression is a collective endeavor, built upon both extraordinary vision and everyday acts of courage. They navigated complex social, legal, and physical landscapes, often risking imprisonment, violence, and even death, to create pathways to freedom. Their actions remind us that standing up for justice is rarely safe or easy. Yet it is through such unwavering commitment that societal change becomes possible. The combination of personal bravery, strategic thinking, and moral clarity they exhibited forged a living testament to the capacity of individuals to challenge entrenched injustice and to effect lasting transformation. The lessons of this era extend far beyond the historical facts of the Underground Railroad or the legal milestones of the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment. They resonate in the enduring human struggle for equality and justice, emphasizing that freedom is not simply granted, it is pursued, fought for, and defended, often at great personal cost. The courage of those who escaped and those who aided them serves as an enduring reminder that resilience and moral resolve can confront systems of oppression, and that ordinary people, when guided by principles of justice and compassion, can achieve extraordinary outcomes. These stories illuminate the ways in which human agency intersects with historical forces, showing that progress often emerges from the tension between systemic injustice and the persistent efforts of those unwilling to accept it. By reflecting on this shared history, we are invited to recognize the interconnectedness of struggle, courage, and freedom. Every footstep taken through forests and rivers by escapees, every covert signal arranged by conductors, and every act of advocacy or public defiance contributed to a larger narrative of moral resistance that reshaped the nation. The physical hardships endured, the strategic decisions made, and the moral choices confronted by these individuals collectively shaped the course of history, demonstrating that liberty is both a deeply personal quest and a societal achievement. Reliant on the courage and perseverance of many, the stories of escape, resistance, and ultimate emancipation are not just historical episodes. They are enduring lessons in human dignity, ethical courage, and the power of sustained, principled action. As we honor the sacrifices and bravery of these individuals, it is also essential to recognize that their struggle laid the foundation for future generations to continue advocating for justice, equality, and human rights. The principles they fought for: freedom from oppression, respect for human dignity, and the pursuit of justice remain relevant today, urging us to consider how we, too, might contribute to creating a world where every person can live free from fear, discrimination, and exploitation. Their legacy challenges us to act with empathy, courage, and moral clarity in the face of injustice, reminding us that meaningful change often requires both vision and persistence, as well as the willingness to risk comfort and safety in defense of what is right. In conclusion, the story of enslaved individuals seeking freedom and the abolitionists who guided them illustrates the extraordinary heights of human resilience and the enduring power of moral resistance. It is a narrative of courage, determination, and hope that transcends its historical moment, offering timeless lessons about the pursuit of justice and the defense of human dignity. As we remember these acts of heroism and sacrifice, let us carry forward the spirit of perseverance and moral courage in our own lives, drawing inspiration from those who refused to accept oppression and who fought tirelessly for freedom, knowing that their struggles ultimately helped shape a more just and humane society. Thank you so much for watching and taking the time to engage with this story. If you found this video insightful, inspiring, or meaningful, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others so we can continue to explore history and the lessons it offers together. Your support helps us tell these important stories and keep the memory of these brave individuals alive. From all of us here, we wish you a peaceful night and sweet dreams. And may the courage and resilience of those who fought for freedom inspire you always. Good night.